Hi, John Hess, and welcome to this Filmmaker IQ Critique, where you send in your projects, be they film, documentary, or industrial, and I'll try to provide some constructive criticism. Now, keep in mind, this is not a value judgment. We're not here to tear anybody down. Instead, we're going to go through these projects and see what we can learn. Now, in this process, some of my style, my taste will be coming through, although ultimately my goal is to get the project to meet your vision as best as we can here, at least. So let's get started. We got something here from Caution Glass. This is a talking head industrial for a health action physical therapy. So let's dive right in. Now, if you want to watch this without my commentary, which I recommend, I'll provide the link below. Watch that, come back here, and then we'll do the critique.
My name is Rick Reichert, and I went to Health Actions on the advice of my doctor. I got injured playing in a doubles tennis tournament.
Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is the letterboxing that's going on here. Now, it looks like what happened here is you're shooting at 4K. 4K is 40,096 by 2160. That's not exactly 16 by 9. So when you put a 4K image on a 16 by 9, you get these very, very thin bars on the top and bottom. To me, that's just doesn't look very good. The bars are they're too minuscule to create a sense of widescreen aspect ratio. They're not like the thick bars you get with 2.39 aspect ratio. And in industrial video, you tend to want to play very conservatively, especially with aspect ratios. You want to fill that 16 by 9 frame. If you want to do a 2.39, you could use like a colored letterboxing bars and put graphics there in that area. But something like this, you're better off just zooming in and filling that 16:9 frame. Let the images on the side kind of cut off. Quick little addendum, while editing, I realized this wasn't that 4K to HD standard. It was using the aspect ratio of 2.0. And 2.0 has become kind of popular since like the mid 2010s when Netflix started using it on a lot of shows. The thing is, though, those shows are narrative shows. Those are not industrials. And here's why I would recommend staying away, just sticking to the traditional 16 by 9 frame, filling that frame up, because when you introduce those little elements, they basically create additional lines that affect your composition, especially when you're working with graphics. And to me, it's kind of pointless. There's no reason why you want that 2.0. It doesn't really do anything in this situation. It's not really an artistic choice because it doesn't drive the purpose of the project, which is the narrative, which is to sell the product in question. Okay, now back we go to the critique. Speaking of graphics, that graphic there for his title doesn't really do much for me. It's very kind of plain and boring. And I think what's more importantly, it doesn't really match the rest of the brand. Now, look at that font there and then compare it to the ending font right there. You see, we've got a mix of the thin and somewhat bolder fonts. I would try to find a font that matches that logo font and use that for your lower third. Maybe perhaps also utilize that logo there, that little Running Man logo, and then put the name. I would put the first name in that softer, and then the last name in the bolder font like that. It would just fit better with the brand. And then while you're at it, utilize that brand color blue. Use the brand blue. Now, as far as the lighting on this talking head, it's really hard to light something when you're outside like that. On a bigger production, what they'll do is they'll utilize what's called a silk. A silk is basically a large, thin material that you would use to create some sort of shade. So you'd be putting this big, giant silk like over here so the sun is not so harsh on the actor or on the talent. And then a good thing here might be putting a bounce board on the bottom here so that you fill in some of the shadow area. The problem when you have a talking head with like the sunglasses is the eyes are really a way for the audience to connect with the person. And when you have sunglasses, it sort of defeats the purpose of drawing that connection. So here, example, a silk would be better in that it just makes it easier for us to see the person, and you're not resorting to sunglasses. But again, I understand this is the reality of doing client work, right? As far as the color grading goes for this particular talking headshot, it does feel a little muted. I think you could probably boost the saturation up a little bit. If we go further in the project, you see some of these shots here with the tennis. The flesh tones are much more warmer, a little bit more, just a little bit nicer. The talking head just feels a little too too muted still. So I would push saturation up a little bit more.
My name is Rick Reichert, and I went to Health Actions on the advice of my doctor. I got injured playing in a doubles tennis tournament at Westgate Tennis Center.
Now, when you go from this color shot here of him playing tennis to this more desaturated look, it's sort of that cliched infomercial, like, oh, this is what happens. You know, he got hurt on this particular shot. That transition, you need something there to kind of visually trigger that transition. Otherwise, it just feels like you just cut to something without color grading it. It looked like you cut to some log footage. So in a situation like this, you can use like a dip to white or some sort of like an exposure blur that makes things really bright. That way it just creates a little visual contrast so we know we're jumping to a different idea. It's not a continuation of the same idea.
I got injured playing in a doubles tennis.
See how that just gives it a little something separation.
Called my doctor. He immediately set me up with an appointment at Health Actions. They helped me work through the program they had with a few other younger people. And they definitely helped me feel quick.
Right here is a good example of where you can make a lot of cuts to make that delivery a lot better. And I'm going to make a lot of ums and ahs, whatever. I'm not cutting myself to be an industrial promotional video. So here we've got two things that we can cut. Right here.
And
that
they definitely helped me.
So we can cut those and extend this B-roll footage of him walking here.
And
so I'm going to cut out that Go ahead and delete that. Get rid of that at the very end there.
A few other younger people. And they definitely helped me feel quicker, feel better. The program they had with a few other younger people. They definitely helped me feel quicker, feel better, and move better.
To my ear, that just sounds so much smoother and just so cleaner. So when I'm doing a project like this, which is a testimonial, and the clients will come up with the people for you to interview, and of course they're always going to be various different levels of ability. It's a complete crapshoot what you get with a client. What I will do though is I will first start off by taking all the sections and kind of laying out what I call a radio edit. And what that means is I'm basically editing for sound only. I'm not worried about visuals. So I will get all my ideas straight, where I want them to go. And then I will go and look for those and just little tiny micro phrases that I can cut out that don't necessarily push the point home. As we go further, I'll kind of talk about some other sections where that similar stuff happens. But if you can kind of streamline the message, remember all industrials are basically they're there to sell a point. So anything that isn't there to sell the point, anything that isn't moving us toward the call to action essentially is frivolous. And you can get very granular and try to get those little tiny things out of there.
Different exercises that she taught me how to do, and I kept going weekly for about 6 to 8 weeks. All the people there were great. They took care of me.
So here, I don't think you need to double up those shots here. You have the talent there opening the bag, then where he's looking into the bag, open the bag again, and then he's pulling out again. That's double action. Just get rid of a set of those. So basically, have him open the bag and finish up pulling the bracket. You don't need to connect those double shots. It's frivolous. And then you've got this beautiful slider shot with the parallax. And parallax is always great. Parallax is always very sexy. Give me more parallax shot. Like that, you could use that to cover up the missing frames that you get rid of those two shots.
I had fun going to Health Actions. And of course, we all made fun of each other. I know.
So we all made fun of each other. That's a line that I feel like wouldn't be appropriate necessarily because, again, we're talking about marketing. Somebody who's watching this may not want to go to a physical therapist that makes fun of other people. They may find that, sort of off-putting. Again, it doesn't quite fit the narrative. You can easily cut that particular phrase out and then leave everything else around it.
I went in there several times, and they had certain names for exercise, like a grasshopper. They had all these unique names, and of course, I would go in there and say, she'd say do a certain exercise, and I'd do a different exercise, not really remembering what a grasshopper was or the type of exercise, but I knew how to do the exercise when I get home so I could make myself feel better. He also showed me how to stretch before I went and played tennis. And I had another double.
All right, so this little story, it's one of the first two sections here. It does feel a little rambly. It's not the worst culprit, honestly, but I would look for ways to try to trim that down, because we don't necessarily need to know that he went, to find out what the grasshopper was, and he forgot what the grasshopper was, but then he remembered the grasshopper. It's like, it's not really relevant or important. Remember, the purpose of this video is to get people to be comfortable with this physical therapist. Now, the next thing is he's switching over to talking about the stretches for tennis. I think that's probably a more important thing than the stories about the grasshopper, or the grasshopper exercise. But what's happened here is, I think you're trying to cut them too close together. Give a little bit of a pause between stories. You can have a little bit of a breath there. That way it feels like something different. And you've got plenty of B-roll that you can just create a little bit of a beat and then go into the next portion of the industrial.
And I had another doubles tournament down, a state tournament down in Mobile, and I was able to play through that tennis tournament without getting injured. And being injured, actually going to work is a problem also. But mainly I do it for tennis, because tennis is my exercise for every day. After COVID, didn't have a chance to get back in the gym. I kind of wimped out and didn't go back into the gym. So tennis at night, you can do that after you finish working.
So essentially, there are three things going on in this particular anecdote. It's about, getting hurt, but then going to work while you're hurt, and then not going to the gym because of COVID, and then not using tennis to exercise. Figure out a way to streamline that, because it is a lot of frivolous material that's not necessary for the story or what the particular message that you're trying to get across. Maybe when you're conducting the interview, you want to guide the talent more toward going on message there as far as what you want to say in this industrial. But just that whole portion, I think you're just going to start losing people, because it's just a lot of rambling, like what I'm doing right now, actually. So let's continue on.
So tennis at night, you can do that after you finish working. So I play tennis a lot at night, keeps my exercise up. I'm 55 years old, so you got to stay in shape to keep everything going, as your doctor says, and I'm sure that they would tell me at Health Action. I can honestly say Health Actions after my therapy helped me feel better, move better, and live better. They kept me going when I needed to keep going. They were a blessing at the time I got hurt.
So in there is a soundbite I think is probably going to be really important, but it's kind of getting lost in the message. And that is I'm 55 years old, I got to stay in shape, I got to get everything going. That feels to me like that's the pinnacle of that whole statement about the tennis and the exercising thing. That pretty much negates all the other stuff. You could cut almost everything else and keep that portion, because that's going to lead you to the final message.
I'm 55 years old, so you got to stay in shape to keep everything going, as your doctor says, and I'm sure that they would tell me at Health Action. I can honestly say Health Actions after my therapy helped me feel better, move better, and live better. They kept me going when I needed to keep going. They were a blessing at the time I got hurt.
So that's the line, right? That's your message. It's almost the call to action. It's not quite a call to action, because you're not asking the viewer to actually do something, but it is sort of the thesis of what you're trying to say here.
Say Health Actions after my therapy helped me feel better, move better, and live better.
Make that line up with the swell of the music, and that will help that out. And then get rid of the trailing off. I see this a lot. I've edited like people speaking naturally for 20 years now, and most people, myself included, don't know how to end a phrase. Like the phrase line is,
my therapy helped me feel better, move better, and live better. They kept me going when I needed to keep going. They were a blessing.
Stop. stop, because then it keeps going on and it flutters. It does take a little bit of discipline to know, hey, I said enough, stop. One last thing I do want to mention, be careful with that logo. I would probably end up putting that logo, and you put it as a bug in the corner of the frame. It works fine when you have a shot like that, which is green. But when you have shots like this, it's literally impossible to see, and it feels like noise. What you can do in situations like that is only put the bug on when it is visible and just take the bug off when it's going to be like terribly unreadable like that. You can put it over a white background and make a sort of a white box around it. You can do a white shadow on it. Those are another possibilities, but probably for something like this, I would probably end up creating some sort of background to kind of help that logo pop off of the background. But otherwise, I mean, I like all the action shots. They look great. The color is pretty good outside of the I think just the little minor things with the talking head stuff. Good job. I hope the client was happy with it, and hopefully get some business out of it. Thank you for submitting your project, and I hope we all learned something from this critique. If you'd like me to critique your project, go ahead and send me an email on filmmakeriq.com in the Contact Us page. We're looking for projects under 5 minutes, or if you have a longer project, just send me like a 5-minute clip of it, and we'll talk about that. That way, I won't spend like, a year going through it piece by piece like this. Thanks for all my patrons on Patreon for sticking it out here with me. Make sure to pick up some merch at the merch shelf below. For all that's for me to say is to go out there, make something great, and have me critique it. I'll see you later at filmmakeriq.com.